If you have a true, strange, or scary story you would like to share with the channel, go to astheravendreams.com on any browser that is not Microsoft Edge, because Microsoft Edge still doesn't like my website. And thank you. So, I feel that I should preface this by saying that I only ever dealt with the paranormal as a child, mainly in my room. I don't know if something had happened in my room before I lived there, but I do remember that I had multiple unsettling experiences. On this night, I remember going to sleep easily, but at some point I had gotten woken up to hearing a dull tapping from under my bed, which is surprising since I used to sleep like the dead. But somehow, when I had awoken, I felt that something was off. I wasn't fully aware and had assumed that I just woke myself up for no reason. Maybe the tap was in my dreams. As I started to drift back to sleep, I felt the slats supporting my mattress shift. I was surprised but assumed it was my sister hiding under the bed trying to scare me. I wanted to get her back and started to slowly lean over the side. Wait, did I just hear a tap against the opposite side of my frame? Was my sister going to try to grab my leg from the small gap against the wall? I still played along and dipped over the edge of my bed. Huh? Where was Renee? Is she actually on the top bunk sleeping? My eyes started to adjust to the dark and I noticed feet. Right as I noticed the feet, I felt the bed dip behind me. I went rigid. I didn't dare move. I could tell that the bed was dipping on either side of my feet like someone's palms were pressing in. I'm wide awake now, and that's when I hear it. I can hear my sister softly snoring from above me. This isn't my sister. I should have known. There's no way she could have crawled up onto the bed from there. There's no breath either. I should be able to hear the thing hunched behind me, or at least hear it scratch the wall, right? How can it even be sitting like that? It can't be on its knees if I can see the feet. Bones just don't work like that. I don't know why 7-year-old me just accepted their fate. What was I gonna do? Run? I was basically upside down, as vulnerable as I could have been. The only thing I could think of was to reason with it. Shakily, I whispered out, I get my bed and you get under the bed. I won't bother you if you stay there, okay? I felt the weight shift again as I watched the calves come into view. At least, I think they were calves. I couldn't really tell what it was made of, but I averted my eyes because I really didn't want to see it look back at me. When I felt the weight leave my bed, I crawled back up until I was a pile of limbs and blankets in the middle of my bed. I felt comfort in knowing it wouldn't be able to touch me now. It was probably more of that I wouldn't be able to feel it through all the layers. I squeezed my eyes shut, just hoping I would wake up at any moment. That it would just be a dream within a dream. Well, I did wake up the next morning, relieved feeling that it was just a dream, even though I still made it a habit to leap into bed or tie my shoes from the floor so that I could see under my bed. Later that week, I made the mistake of telling my sister my dream, and she told me that a couple of nights ago she heard a tapping, and not on the bed frame. She heard something tapping the heater. She told me that when she looked to see what it was, she saw a hand. A thin, needle-like hand tapping the heater to almost mimic the sound of it heating up. Needless to say, I begged my sister for months to let me sleep on the top bunk, and eventually she let me. Over time, I sort of pushed the events to the back of my mind. It still sticks with me to this day. It just feels a little too real. But I feel that I made an agreement on that day, and I guess that ghost or entity was kind enough to respect my boundaries. I'm just glad that I don't live there anymore. Hello, Raven. This is my first time ever making a Reddit post, so please excuse any mistakes on my part. By the way, to anyone listening, my subreddit is r/The Raven's Dream. I have always had paranormal encounters since childhood, and have always believed in the unseen. The earliest experience I can recall is when I was about 6 years old, during a storm when a flash of lightning filled my room, when I saw a small girl on my dresser looking back at me. However, that's not what I'm here to share. My first story takes place in the house that my mother currently lives in. When I turned 18, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to get out of my small Midwestern town and live in Hawaii for 2 years. By the time my living situation had fizzled out there, and I had no choice but to move back to my small hometown, my mother had moved into an old house on the east side of town, a house completely unknown to me. The house is currently around 115 years old, and has sat solemnly there through the development of a larger part of the town. By the time the day in question occurred, I had experienced such things as hearing my name being called when no one was there, growls across the couch from me, hearing footsteps across the floor when I was home alone, and many other small paranormal experiences, and was well aware the house is haunted. It was my best friend's 23rd birthday, we'll call her C, and we had decided spur of the moment that we were going to point the car in a direction and see what we can see. Being from the Midwest and not having too many exciting places around, we decided that we would drive to Des Moines, Iowa, as there was many little thrift shops and good places to eat. We headed to my mom's house so I could get ready and pack a bag. I chose a black Nightmare Before Christmas t-shirt and a pair of blue jean shorts to wear. This will be relevant to the story. C sat in the living room watching TV and messing around on her phone waiting for me to be ready to go. From my perspective, I'm sitting there at my dresser straightening my hair listening to music, excited to finish up and hit the road. When all of a sudden C comes into my room pale as a sheet. I asked what was wrong. She just stated over and over to get my bags and other things together, and that she wasn't going to tell me what was wrong until we were the hell out of this house. Confused, I gathered my belongings and followed her out to her car. She began to tell me that she was scrolling on her phone when I walked by and stated in my own voice that I was going to get something out of her car. She looked over her phone long enough to see that I was wearing a white band t-shirt and black shorts. She stated she heard the front door open and close, even seeing the light flood the room as it does when a door is opened. She waited for a while, and when I did not come back in through the living room, she assumed I was smoking outside without her. After cussing me out under her breath for a little for not grabbing her as we always asked if the other wanted to smoke. When she went outside to join me, and didn't see me, she became confused, as the back door to my mom's house is fully blocked off with plastic, and always has been. When C came into my room and saw me there still, wearing a completely different outfit, she realized it was obviously not me she had seen and talked to. She was thoroughly creeped out, as I was. I mean, that thing used my voice. It's a story we tell often and are able to laugh about it now. I have so many other stories, including the time a spirit ripped me down the bed by my ankles in the same house. As I do believe I am a magnet for the paranormal, I will more than likely share that story and others sometime. Thank you for creating a space where people can share such stories. Much love. Been listening to the stories, and I just wanted to say that I love them very much. I usually listen to them as I work, and it's been helping with focus. Well, happy to be of service. As for my story, I've always had an inkling that stuff is attracted to me, or that I sort of attract stuff. The unknown and strange has always piqued my interest, so a part of me is always looking for it. On to the story. When I was younger, around 10 to 13 years old, strange things were frequently happening around me. I'm not sure if it was a specific entity that likes to follow me around, or that I was just more sensitive to the paranormal at the time, but those were truly strange times. My stuff would disappear and then reappear in places that I have searched. That feeling of being watched, shadows dancing at your peripheral, the things just straight up moving without prior intervention. The most notable of these events happened around other people, part of which I think it was something following me. I had two friends that I would regularly hang out with at school, and they were the other people that saw it. One time was in the restrooms. Cliché, I know. Being young and dumb, we were scaring each other by turning the lights on and off, and making weird noises ranging from shrill singing to bird noises. So, here we are, me and my friend laughing our back ends off, and in front of us is those big mirrors you typically see in public restrooms. I was mid-joke, probably making an impression of whatever cartoon show we were watching at the time, when my friend screams, points, and runs out. To note, the lights were off at this time, and I was just confused. I thought they were messing with me, thinking that I walk out pointing at them, chuckling at their attempt to scare me. When I catch up to them, they were outside the hallway white as a sheet. I jest and ask them, was the ghost scary? And she asks me if I did not see the thing. I think the room was dark, so stuff was pretty blurry. Then I remember. As I was walking out, the wall behind me had a weird shadow cast on it. With how the room is put together, sunlight still went in the part where the big mirror was, so that shadow that stretched throughout the space behind me was just impossible. The other incident involved two of my friends, same one from the restroom. I was walking down the stairs and they ran down, leaving me at the steps. At the end of the stairs, there's this big bulletin board inside an acrylic case, so it reflected light. At their angle, the staircase was visible as a reflection. So was I. And another figure behind me. They described it as this big, tall, blurry thing just behind me. Thinking that a teacher was going to find us hanging around after class, they turned to face the staircase, only to find me at the stairs walking down still. We left after that. They did ask if I saw someone, which I did not. We still talk about these stories from time to time, and so far it's been consistent throughout the years, so they definitely remember. I would tell more, but just typing these out creeps me out. Like there's someone just looking over my shoulder type of creepy. Stuff does still happen to me, although incidents definitely have lessened, so perhaps I'm not that intuitive about them anymore. Can't say that they've mellowed out, though. Hello, Raven. I found your podcast on Spotify and usually listen while I'm at work, and also sometimes to go to sleep at night. Thank you. I know that I put that this is paranormal, however, in my mind, this was not scary in any way, and all I felt while going through this was love. So, here I go. I'm a 44-year-old female, and this happened when I was 25, so in 2005, and into the year 2006. As my mom has always loved old houses and would buy them to fix them up, I've had several paranormal experiences, and so these types of things have stopped being scary. This story started when I met my very best friend in 2000, as my oldest daughter started Head Start. My bestie had a son who started at the same time. From the day we met, we essentially spent every day together. We were both stay-at-home moms, and so she was either always at my house or vice versa. Fast forward to the year 2005, and I now have 3 kids. 2 who are in school, and 1 who's at home, who spends his day with us while we take our walks, go swimming, run errands, eat in the little diner in our small town, etc. As she could not have any more kids, she loved my little one to pieces, and would play with him all the time. He would bring her toys and say play, and she would sit in front of his toy box and play while we visited. She spent a lot of time doing this. On July 18th of 2005, she drove her husband to work so she could run her errands, when she was struck by an 18-wheeled dump truck and killed. Her son survived, thank God. I don't remember a whole lot after this until probably September, when I finally came out of my depression. But I started to notice my son, who was still playing in the way that he used to. He would take toys to the couch, say play, and then proceed to walk back to the toy box and pull all of his toys out. He would sit in his high chair and make funny faces and then just giggle to himself. Then he would continue to do that talking babble that kids will do, and parents will talk back to them, even not understanding a word. I started asking, "Who are you playing with or talking to?" And he would say her name. Or at least his version of her name. To add some other points, after she passed, we started going through light bulbs like crazy. We couldn't keep a light bulb longer than a couple of weeks to a month. And I know most will say that's not evidence of anything, but I know that she was here. I had an extremely hard time with her death. For almost 8 months after her passing, at least twice a week, I would dream of going to the little diner, the one that we would often eat at almost daily when she was alive. And I would watch as she came over, sat down, and in my dream we would talk and catch up like nothing had ever happened. We would also spend hours on the phone to a point where it drove my husband crazy. After she passed, our phone would ring but no one would be on the other end, and the screen would just say private. In the end, I realized that she was hanging around, wanting to make sure I was okay before moving on. So, I came to the conclusion that I had to let her go. It was so very hard, but I also did not want her to be stuck. I'm not an expert by any means, but you hear the stories of ghosts who don't move on and get stuck. So I sat on my bed and had a very emotional talk, letting her know that I would be okay. That it would be hard, but that I wanted her to be safe with God, or wherever her heaven may be. I truly feel that day she did at least leave us. Still, to this day, at least once or twice a year, I will have our diner dream, and we catch up. I like to think that she remembers me and is just dropping in to say hi. Like I said before, this was not scary but loving. Maybe one day I'll sit and write out some of the paranormal stories from my childhood, but until then, thank you, Raven, for keeping us all sane. This took place in 2020 in Wadsworth, Illinois. There's a cemetery called Old St. Patrick's Cemetery, and behind there in the woods, it is known as Devil's Pool. It was rumored that they held satanic rituals back in the 80s and early 90s, and supposedly Bloody Mary is the name of the witch who was hung around the Civil War, to give a little background. So, one night, me and my friend Ivy decided we wanted to find where her house was in the woods behind the cemetery, and as we were getting ready to go back there, a group of teenage boys asked if they could join. We agreed, so it was me, 21 at the time, Ivy, 19, and I can't remember how old the boys were, but there were 5 of them. Anywho, we started walking into the woods, using our phones as flashlights. We were walking maybe about 100 feet from the back of the cemetery when I heard something say, "Turn back." Me being me, I was thinking maybe one of the guys said it to mess with us, so I said, "Hey, why did y'all say turn back?" They all said that they hadn't said it, and I just said, "Sure." I decided to take pictures so we could all look back at them, and we continued on. We got to these little trees, and there were 4 of them in a circle, with 666s spray painted on them. We were all laughing, saying, "Wow, how scary." I walked in the middle where the smaller tree was, and something was hanging in it, but I couldn't quite make out what was on there. Then, all of a sudden, I fell into the ground, and this small tree started falling on me. I started panicking, and one of the boys had to drag me out, and I was all like, what the hell was that at that point? I wanted to turn around, but they all still wanted to find this house, so we continued on. Then I noticed that we ended up back in the middle of these 4 trees. We were all freaking out at that point, because how did we end up back there? It didn't make any sense. So I decided to look on Google Maps to see how far we were from the cemetery, and my phone wouldn't work. It kept glitching and giving me this random address. I took a screenshot, so the guys in Ivy tried their phones, but their batteries drained, and one by one they died. So I said, screw this, we are not staying here. And I made all them go in front of me, and then something grabbed the back of my shirt and yanked me backwards, choking me. We were all panicking, and we all heard someone screaming in the distance. It wasn't like a person screaming, it was the most wretched thing I've ever heard. But I was trying not to freak out too much. I just knew that I needed to stay calm and get out of there. I then said out loud, "We don't mean you any harm, we just want to go home." And we then all started running. We finally made it back to the cemetery. I was bleeding and my shirt was ripped in the back. I kid you not, I had 3 deep cuts on my back. It looked like claw marks. We all went to the road and were talking about how messed up it all was. We looked back at all the pictures I took and they all came out blurry. You couldn't make anything out besides for this dark figure behind me. Me and Ivy went home and decided to go back in the daytime. We couldn't find the trees anymore, but we did end up finding the house. More like a cottage that was torn down. Only the basement level was left of it, and all around it was baby doll heads with symbols painted on them. It was creepy, and there were animal bones scattered everywhere. There were other encounters that happened there as well, but I'll have to share those another time. Many people probably won't believe me, but I can wholeheartedly tell you that I am telling the truth, that something or someone was there that night with us, and caused that crazy phenomenon. I've had a few paranormal experiences throughout my life, but this one terrified me. I was a teenager in 2010. I lived and still live in northern Wisconsin. Near the border of Wisconsin and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, down a quiet little road, lies the ruins of Summerwind Mansion. Official stories of the mansion only note how many times it burned down, and that there had been a strange murder there in the 1800s. There are reports that one of the owners had found a small corpse while remodeling, but that it disappeared as quickly as it was seen. The story I had always heard was that, in the early 1900s, a wealthy man lived in the mansion with his wife and daughter. For unknown reasons, the man killed his wife and daughter, put his daughter's body in one of the lit fireplaces, and then took his own life. Only a staircase and 2 tall chimneys stood in 2010. My friends all said that they had seen the little girl float from chimney to chimney. I did not at all believe in ghosts or anything of the sort. One sunny summer day, my friend and my boyfriend at the time decided to take a trip up to Summerwind. The vibes were great on the way up there. Good music, laughing, talking. When we got to Summerwind, nothing changed. We explored a bit, being the first time any of us had been there in the daylight. Eventually, we made our way under the remaining staircase. Being a skeptic and suffering from angry teenage angst, I went on a rant how I didn't believe in ghosts. I called the little girl ghost every name in the book, daring her to show herself. I also said that I would believe it when I see it. The vibes changed. I didn't know until later, but we were all feeling uneasy. The ride back to my house was nearly silent and uncomfortable. My friend was sleeping over. I had a futon bunk bed. She took the top bunk, I had the futon below. The uneasy feeling began to skyrocket steadily as we were trying to fall asleep. I remember we also went to bed unusually early, probably trying to get rid of our unease. Eventually, my heart was racing and I couldn't figure out why. Concerned, I told my friend what I was feeling. Her voice cracked as she said she was feeling the exact same way. Fear sank into me. I told her not to mess with me. She then started crying and said that she wasn't. I had been lying on my side facing the wall. At that moment, I rolled over, now looking away from the wall. I saw a small shadow figure standing in the middle of my room, with a bright light emitting from behind it. I felt paralyzed in fear, and I asked if she could see it. She gasped and sobbed as she said yes. My childhood home was no bigger than a trailer home. My parents were incredibly light sleepers. I screamed bloody murder for my mom, while the shadow figure stood still in the middle of my tiny room. With no response from my mom, I was now crying, ready to crawl out of my skin, overcome with dread. I jumped out of my bed and bolted to the light switch. I flicked it on and shakily said that I believed. I was so sorry for everything I said. I believe now. As soon as the light was on, the figure and other mysterious light vanished. The fear and dread immediately left my body. Wiping tears, I told my friend to tell it that she believed and that she would feel better. I still don't know why, but she refused to. She didn't sleep that night, or the next, at her own house. Since this event, I have never returned to Summerwind. Hey Raven, I just wanted to say that I'm a huge fan of the podcast and love your voice. Thank you. Now on to the story. Just a bit of context before I get started. I live in a super tiny town in the middle of nowhere, Nevada, with a population of about 300 people. This doesn't really matter too much, but does kind of come in later on in the story. I'm not really too sure about ghosts and all things paranormal, but I do believe there are things that we will never understand in this life. So, in my town, there is a tiny community building called The Square. Supposedly, it has had some rumors of it being haunted, but I really didn't believe it until this story happened. The layout of this building is a bit confusing, so I'll try to explain it as best I can. Running through my town is a north and south running highway. Going south through the town, and on the right, is the building. There's a little back road that turns right and goes right in front of this building, and the building's main entrance. In front of the building, there is a tiny parking area where you can park your car, but it's not like a full parking lot. Me and 3 of my friends are sitting in this little parking area facing the highway at around 11:30 to 12 a.m., deciding what we should do next. As previously mentioned, our town is super tiny, so there's absolutely no one else around, especially not at this time of night. Anyways, we're sitting in my car and I have my driver's door open because it's hot, and I want to stretch my legs out. All of a sudden, there is this loud scream that sounds like a kid screeching. I turn to my friend, we'll call her H, who's in the passenger seat of my car, and I ask her if she heard the screaming too. She said yes, so I turned back and asked my other friends if they heard the screaming too, and she said yes, that she heard it as well. So, a little freaked out, we're still just sitting there talking, when all of a sudden I hear these footsteps coming from behind my car, sounding like they're sprinting at me. I look over at my friend H, and she looks at me with a concerned look, so I look out my door. See no one, slam my door and drive away super fast. We look behind us and see no one, and the way we were facing on the road made it possible for there to be absolutely nowhere for someone to hide. Mind you, we don't drink or do any kind of drugs, so that rules that out. And in our town, no one but us was even awake at this time, let alone out and about. It was my first ever real paranormal encounter, if you even want to call it that, and it still freaks me out to this day. Hi Raven, love your channel and decided to share one of my stories with you. This is a story that happened to me some time ago, but it still gives me the creeps. During my medical residency, I was transferred for a brief 2-week stint at a different hospital. Because of my short stay, I wasn't assigned my own locker. Instead, I was told to find one on the second floor, a floor that was mostly deserted, used only for lockers, cleaning equipment, and sterilization rooms. The silence up there was unnerving, as if the floor had been forgotten by time. The only guest locker room was number 219, inside a long array of empty lockers stretched out before me. From the moment I stepped into that room, I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that I was being watched. The sensation was so strong that it made my skin crawl. To make matters worse, the motion detection light had a mind of its own, flickering, often taking their sweet time to activate, as if deciding whether to leave me in the dark or not. I chose a locker further down the row, trying to ignore the unease that prickled at the back of my neck. For the first few days, nothing out of the ordinary happened, though the flickering light continued to give me the creeps. I told myself it was just an old building, probably in need of some maintenance. But then, on one of my last days there, something happened that I can't explain. I was in the locker room, already changed into my scrubs, but I lingered to read through the cases that I'd been assigned. The room was silent, except for the soft hum of the building's systems. Suddenly, that silence was shattered by a loud, constant noise, a metallic clanging that echoed through the empty room. Startled, I looked up, my heart pounding and my veins tightening in my neck. The sound was coming from one of the lockers. Despite the fear twisting in my gut, I forced myself to approach it. As I opened the door, I saw a coat hanger inside violently banging against the metal walls of the locker. But there was no one there. I wasn't moving, and the air was still. No drafts, no vibrations, nothing that could explain the movement in that precise locker. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, but there was none. The hanger continued to thrash before my eyes, and I just stood there, waiting for my fight-or-flight system to kick in. Finally, my brain chose flight. I quickly shut the locker and backed away, my heart still hammering in my chest. I left the room as fast as I could, not bothering to look back. I was so shaken that I never returned to get my clothes or shoes. I went home in my scrubs that night. Even now, I'm certain that that locker room was haunted. Something was in there with me 100%. If anyone has an explanation for what happened, I would love to read it. I have more stories from hospitals that me and my colleagues have experienced, and maybe I'll share them some other time. I had a dear friend named Marie. She lay in dire straits in the oncology unit in a hospital she'd worked at a good many years as a doctor. I had planned to visit her after work, and was going to take my friend Oscar from Paraguay to go with me to pray for her. He was very spiritual and faith-filled, and I had seen literally miracles from his mother's hands as well. His mother had died, so I latched onto him to bring help to her. An out-of-the-blue strangling tumor on her spine had given her less than 2 months to live, but yet she had 4 years. Every single doctor who'd read her chart opening diagnosis commented that after reading the first line, the chart should have ended in death, but it didn't, and was laboriously heavy with 4 years of unbelievable happenings. My friend Oscar talked to and then prayed for my friend. It was difficult because a man next door was mentally challenged and very ill, constantly shrieking and hollering. My friend Marie was so nervous and upset with it that she was nearly crazy. Oscar excused himself and took me with him next door to this man's room. His old mother was with him, and I would say he was in his 50s, and maybe her in her late 70s. "May I pray for your son?" Oscar asked kindly. "Oh yes, please," she responded. He did so all in either Guarani or Spanish. He was half German and half Guarani Indian. When he finished, the man was silent and seemed peaceful, and everyone in that unit sighed in great relief. But the next several days, when we both returned to check on Marie, the mother of the man in the next room sought Oscar out angrily. "What did you do to my son?" she demanded. He told her that he had prayed for him, and that's all. She kept insisting now he didn't speak at all, and the whole unit was blissfully quiet. It was crazy that she was acting angry with Oscar. We wanted to get out of the woman's wrath, and my friend was much improved, so we left then. And in my car, as I drove up Broadway towards the suburbs, we were both quiet, until I said, "What was that woman so mad about? Why was she crazy acting?" He said, "I prayed that if he was possessed with a demon to silence him in Jesus' name." He never wailed again the whole time Marie was there, nor cursed loudly, shrieked, or hollered loudly, and that's the truth. Hey Raven, I love listening to all your stories. This is my first time submitting. A few years ago, my husband and I went to a luxurious hotel in Florida. We arrived Friday afternoon and got settled in. A few minutes later, we decided to take a trip around the city, and as we were leaving, we noticed that the hallways and the big mirrors were just like the ones in the movie The Shining. This was a little funny to us. We did everything we were going to do in the city and came back to the room. We then took showers and went to bed. My husband likes to get up early in the mornings to run at every city we stay in to see what's around. This morning he was up around 7 a.m. I ended up waking up as well as I heard a bunch of construction from upstairs, right above us. It sounded like hammering, drilling, the whole 9 yards. I was upset because I came here to rest, not to be woken that early from construction. I called downstairs and asked why there was construction at 7 o'clock in the morning, when people were trying to sleep. The front desk told me they were going to check it out. An hour and a half later, when my husband came back from his run, I was still awake and upset because the noise was still happening. I told my husband that I called downstairs, and he told me that when he came in, he asked about the noise to the front desk again, and they told him that there was no construction anywhere in the building, but that they were getting several phone calls about the noise. This kind of scared the crap out of me, but it's a beautiful hotel, and we continued to stay there when we traveled to the city. After that, we haven't had any type of other mysterious sounds or anything. So, is it haunted? Hi, I'm not sure where this story goes, but feel free to edit or pad it out. When I was a teenager, I was in my bedroom and my mom shouted through if I wanted dinner. I had only gotten home from school, so I didn't know what there was in the house to eat. I decided to go and chat with her to see. As I left my bedroom, I had to pass the kitchen to get into the living room. As I did this, I saw my mom bent over the top of the cooker with her hands on either side, wearing something I had never seen before. It was like a 50s style baby blue twin set with the skirt and jacket to match. I already thought that was weird as this was the 90s. So, while I'm thinking this, my mom turns her head to me from over the cooker and gives me the creepiest smile. It gave me goosebumps all over. I continued into the living room where my mom was sitting in a chair in a red jumper and black trousers. She saw my face and asked me what was wrong. I explained everything that just happened, and my mom very nonchalantly said, "Oh, you saw Francis." Never having heard this name before, she explained to me that she had a twin sister who had died at birth in 1950, and she was given the name Francis, which was then given to my mom as a middle name. I never saw Francis again, and after that smile, I never wanted to. Hi, it's me again, the 13-year-old Finnish boy. In this story, you will hear 3 sightings of my dead grandmother. 1, we were at my family's cottage in the north. I had just come out from the sauna. When I got inside, I ate and went to bed, and from my bed you can see the door. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to an old woman's voice saying, "Hello, I came back." I couldn't move. I didn't know what to do. I was in a panic. So that's when I opened my eyes and saw my grandma. I was in absolute shock. After I blinked, she disappeared. 2, I was at home all by myself when I heard the doorbell. As I went to open the door, I looked at a mirror, and as I did, I saw my grandmother standing behind me. I got scared and called my mom. She was scared and called my dad, and then my dad told me not to worry. So, I didn't. And 3, this one happened yesterday. I was at school walking through the hallways when I saw my grandmother roaming around the cafeteria. I told my friend to look, but as he turned around, she disappeared. Man, I hate when ghosts and spirits disappear. But anyways, thank you for reading. I love your podcast, and hopefully you and everybody listening has a great day. And that, my friends, was this week's Paranormal Stories collection. One of 3 paranormal collections planned for this month. I have a lot of stuff planned this month, though, don't worry. Some unexplained stuff, maybe some past life stories, some urbex stories. Probably going to feature a certain female that I live with in that one. Certain lovely lady that I live with. Anyways, one of 3 paranormal collections this month. All of them about this same length, just so you know. So yeah, a lot of ghost stories, a lot of haunting stories this month. But it's October, so of course there are. Anyways, that was this week's Paranormal Stories. Some scary and strange paranormal stories. One not so scary, but still pretty chilling if you ask me. But you didn't ask me, so I take back what I said. Hopefully you all enjoyed this collection of paranormal stories. If you did, please do hit that like button on this video. That'd be amazing of you to do. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, consider hitting subscribe. If you have a scary story or a strange story, we're not just scary stories here on As the Raven Dreams, we're strange and scary. Please consider sending it my way by going to astheravendreams.com or sending me an email at astheravendreams@gmail.com. You can also join Patreon or memberships. Membership is down below the video, the join button. Patreon is on the Patreon website, which is linked down below, to get early access to content like this and other things depending on what you sign up for. I am also still selling posters, 3rd design coming very soon. I have tons of them left, so please do, if you are wanting to buy one, consider it, because there's a lot left for y'all to buy. I am numbering them as I ship them out, so you're still in single digits for all of them, just saying. And I signed them, so. Using that money, most likely, to fund my book whenever I get it printed, whenever I get it self-published, because that's going to be expensive. I remember how much it is to self-publish books. This is not my first self-published book, just so y'all know. This is technically my fourth, but you won't be able to find the other three because they don't exist in the world anymore. But I remember it's pricey, so I'm going to use that money most likely, depending on how much I make and how long it is from now, to get those printed. So, yeah. Buying the posters is funding other projects. So, thank you to those who do. If you don't, that's totally okay. You can also do a super thanks, which is a tip to the channel. Never expected, always appreciated. I think that's about it. Oh, leave me a comment down below with your thoughts, of course. Don't forget that, silly raven. But all that said, and yeah, hopefully you're having a beautiful week so far. Hope you have a great day. Hope I see you again here very soon. But until then, remember that you are loved, that you are valid, that you are important. You're the best you that you can be. Do not forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until next time, my friends, much love, and sleep well.